In today's video, titled, From Frost to Famine, How Weather Anomalies Impact Food Security, we will delve into the complex and urgent issue of climate-induced challenges to global food systems. As unpredictable crop yields, frost damage, drought, and flooding wreak havoc on agricultural production, the ripple effects threaten food availability and accessibility for millions. Join us as we explore the multifaceted consequences of extreme weather events, from increased pest infestations to rising food prices, and understand why developing nations are particularly vulnerable in this scenario. Stay tuned as we uncover how these evolving threats could shape the future of food security worldwide. 1. Unpredictable crop yield. Extreme weather events, like frost, drought, and heavy rainfall, are becoming more common and have a significant impact on food security. These weather anomalies can drastically reduce crop yields, leading to food shortages. When crops fail, prices tend to increase, making food less accessible, especially for vulnerable populations. This unpredictability in crop production creates a ripple effect throughout the economy, affecting everything from food availability to employment in agricultural sectors. Farmers struggle to predict their income, and consumers find it harder to budget for groceries. As a consequence, communities that rely heavily on agriculture face economic instability, which can exacerbate poverty and hunger. 2. Frost damage to crops. Frost can be particularly devastating to crops during critical growth periods. For example, during the flowering or fruiting stages, frost can destroy crops like wheat, corn, and fruit trees. This destruction leads to lost harvests, which can have severe economic implications for farmers who depend on these crops for their livelihood. The financial strain extends beyond the farm, affecting local economies that rely on agricultural success. Frost damage can also lead to a shortage of certain fruits and vegetables in markets, impacting both availability and price. This makes it challenging for consumers to access fresh produce, further threatening their nutritional intake. 3. Drought and water scarcity. Prolonged droughts, often worsened by climate change, significantly reduce water availability for irrigation. Without enough water, crops cannot thrive, leading to food crises in regions that depend heavily on agriculture. Drought conditions stress both crops and farmers, who must find ways to conserve water and maximize yield with limited resources. The lack of water not only impacts crop production but also affects soil health, leading to long-term degradation. This scenario creates a vicious cycle where fertile land becomes barren, reducing future agricultural potential and increasing the risk of famine. 4. Flooding and soil erosion. Heavy rainfall and flooding present another set of challenges for agriculture. Floodwaters can submerge fields, destroying crops and making the land unsuitable for future farming. Moreover, flooding often leads to soil erosion, washing away the topsoil crucial for growing crops. This loss of fertile soil diminishes the land's productivity and requires significant time and resources to remediate. Farmers must rebuild their soil health through labor-intensive processes, which can be costly and time-consuming. Meanwhile, food production declines, leading to shortages and increased prices. 5. Crop disease and pest infestation. Warmer temperatures and erratic weather patterns create favorable conditions for pests and diseases. Locust swarms and fungal infections can devastate entire crops, exacerbating food insecurity. When pests and diseases spread unchecked, they can wipe out large swaths of agricultural land. Farmers must then invest in pesticides and other measures to combat these threats, increasing their costs and reducing profitability. The impact on food security is immediate, as reduced crop yields lead to scarcity and higher prices. Consumers face limited options and higher prices at the market, compounding the challenges they face in accessing nutritious food. 6. Global supply chain disruptions. Weather anomalies such as typhoons or heatwaves can disrupt global food supply chains. These disruptions make it difficult for countries to import or export essential food commodities, leading to price volatility and limited availability. When supply chains are interrupted, the flow of food from producers to consumers is hindered, impacting availability and affordability. Countries that rely on imports for staple foods face increased costs and shortages, while exporters may lose market access. The instability in supply chains can also lead to food waste, as perishable goods spoil before reaching their destination. 7. Impact on livestock. Extreme temperatures, both hot and cold, can affect livestock health and productivity, resulting in lower meat and dairy production. Droughts can lead to feed shortages, further stressing animal populations and reducing their output. When livestock suffers, so does the availability of animal-based products, impacting both nutrition and economy. Farmers must invest in alternative feeds or reduce herd sizes, both of which incur costs and reduce income. The scarcity of meat and dairy products leads to higher prices, making these items less accessible to consumers, particularly those in low-income brackets. 8. Reduced biodiversity. These shifting weather patterns, including temperature fluctuations, can cause shifts in ecosystems and reduce biodiversity. This loss affects wild food sources and pollinators like bees, which are essential for crop production. Reduced biodiversity diminishes ecosystem resilience, making it harder for agricultural systems to adapt to changes. The decline in pollinators leads to lower crop yields, affecting food availability and nutrition. Farmers must rely on artificial pollination techniques, which are not only costly but also less effective. The impact on biodiversity further strains food systems, complicating efforts to achieve food security. 9. Increased vulnerability of developing nations. Countries in sub-Saharan Africa or South Asia, heavily dependent on rain-fed agriculture, are particularly vulnerable to extreme weather events. Economic instability and reliance on agriculture exacerbate food insecurity in these regions. When weather anomalies occur, these nations lack the infrastructure and resources to mitigate their effects, leading to widespread hunger and poverty. The vulnerability of these nations highlights the need for international support and investment in sustainable agricultural practices. Without intervention, the cycle of food insecurity continues, hindering economic growth and development. 10. Rising food prices. Weather anomalies like crop failures due to drought or flooding can drive up the prices of basic staples, such as rice, wheat, and corn. When food prices rise, they can push essential items beyond the reach of low-income households, leading to hunger and malnutrition. The impact is felt most acutely by those who spend a significant portion of their income on food. As prices rise, families are forced to make difficult choices, often sacrificing nutrition for quantity. This scenario creates a cycle of poverty, where access to nutritious food remains elusive, perpetuating health and economic disparities. Weather anomalies caused by climate change are increasing in both frequency and intensity, profoundly affecting food production, distribution, and access. These disruptions pose a serious threat to global food security, particularly for vulnerable populations.